It's Kimi here. Who else would it be? This is Observations with Otsu, episode 83. Hope you've had a good weekend. We took a few weeks off. For those of you that are interested in my personal life in that regard, one of the reasons is we had a daughter uh, late last year. She was very premature, uh, roughly a little over 2 pounds. And so long story short, everybody's healthy, back home, resting. Took, you know, some time off. That wasn't my intention, but I had to take off on some of the YouTube videos that I do. So that is the main reason why. Um, but also too, as more of a collateral reason, the markets weren't really doing very well, and so there was really nothing new to report. The markets had been kind of stale over time, and so and a lot of people weren't really trading anyway. Now things I think have changed, and that's, as you may have seen the title of the video. I do think that we are on the road to recovery here. There's a few things I think we need to look at to stay considerate of the market. However, I do think, one, the worst is over. Two, I do think the opportunities are present and you need to just be aware of them. Okay, and so I'm not saying that we ain't going to go back down. But I also don't want to say that either because everybody says that. I don't want to tell you, like, well, here's my thoughts. If I'm wrong, I don't have any responsibility. But if I'm right, I'm going to claim every responsibility because that's exactly what, a lot of grifters tend to do. There's very popular accounts that will do that to you, extremely popular, that will never admit wrong. They'll never admit wrong current day. They will admit wrong about things that they've done in the past. They will say, "Well, nobody's perfect," so they'll say like things adjacent to being wrong, but they'll never admit in the moment that they are wrong. And honestly, it's because of pride. Because if you try to admit something that you've done 2 years ago, well, that's not really hurting your pride. Like it's all under the bridge. Most people aren't even here to complain about it because most of the people are gone. And so it's one of those things where you gotta take that for what it is. I don't agree with it. I unfollow and mute quite a few people that do that, but I guess that's a different story. So what we're gonna look at here for today is Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. We're gonna stick with those three for now. We're gonna look at the weekly time frames and see how things are shaping up. We'll talk a little bit about the tariffs and Sailor and some of that, but probably not a whole lot, because you guys know my thoughts on that. I think overall, a lot of that has already happened. I mean, we're ending the first quarter here in about 6 7 days, and so I think we're going to move on from that. The big, I guess the big initial summary here is that I do think quarter number one was pretty bad. I think it could have been worse, but it was bad in terms of lack of performance, lost portfolio. My stock portfolio is very heavily volatile compared to my crypto portfolio, and so my stock portfolio is probably one of the worst quarters that I've ever had, outside of maybe pre-COVID, a pre-COVID scenario. So you have that going on, but I do think that quarter two, quarter three, quarter four are all going to be better. We'll see where that goes. Anyway, that's kind of just the intro. We're going to kind of look at Bitcoin. We are going to look at Bitcoin while we look at kind of the theme of why I'm bullish here. Look at some maybe catalysts that we can look at, and then we'll just continue with Ethereum and Solana. So let's get started. So let's look at Bitcoin first. We're going to target the weekly to start with. Then we'll go to the daily and just kind of go down the list with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana on that. So there's a lot of things that have happened really for the past 3 months, and even today. There's been, it talks about tariffs and things like that, and I think it's twofold. I think one, people have kind of overreacted on that to begin with. I've always kind of thought that that was the case. But the second thing, which is subjective, I understand people don't believe that, right? I understand that when people look at tariffs, like, oh my gosh, everything's going to go, one way or the other, and then things sell. I think it's really, 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 really stupid that people just sell everything because there's just some announcement of an announcement about tariffs that don't even directly affect you. I that doesn't make sense to me because the whole mindset of that is, well, we're going to lose money because of the tariffs, so we're just going to go ahead and lose money now instead of later. But then we're also going to lose it later if you keep the same mentality. Okay, and so it doesn't make sense to me to take that approach. But the second thing, and and again, I understand that is subjective. I know some people don't believe that the way that I do. But the second option is one where it's not necessarily subjective. It can be as it plays out, but it's more objective in the sense that as people start reacting to tariffs and they keep reacting and reacting and over and over and over again. So like by the 30th time, nobody cares anymore. Okay, and that's a psychological aspect to the tariffs and to markets in general, is that people will stop reacting to negative news eventually. People will stop reacting to positive news eventually. Okay, that's just how the market psychology works. And that is what I've been waiting for from a psychological standpoint, is because, okay, although I disagree that people should be reacting to tariffs, I also understand that people are reacting to tariffs, and that reaction is getting less and less and less. There was a reaction, or there was an announcement today that tariffs would be added to Venezuela as far as like I believe it was oil, something in that regard, and any country that tries to get oil from them, they're going to have tariffs on them too. And so at some point, this all becomes nonsense. And let's be honest, like most of you guys have no clue what that even entails. Most of us didn't even know what a tariff was like 2 years ago, or even less than that. Like you know, or at least to the detail that is being presented. Right, this is a very um, recent thing from a recent administration. Okay, and so that's something that, of course, it's the forefront, but that also means everybody's gonna be talking about it, but you're not an expert. Okay, most people are not going to be experts. I'm not saying you in general, but most people are not going to be experts about this. Okay, but people are going to react as if they are, and so that's where things like news places really become detrimental, because you see people making a big deal out of it, and then you see people reacting as a big deal about it, and then you start to react over something that people are saying a big deal. It is a big deal, but it may not be. Okay, and that's exactly how you get stopped out on trades. That's exactly how some people like, and I'm guilty of this. I got stopped out of my COVID trades because, and to be fair, it was COVID, but a lot of people basically said, "Hey, the world's going to end, so to speak, in some sense." And that was the very bottom to buy Bitcoin. And so that that's I'm using that as an example to say that is why I don't focus on the news. I focus on the charts. Okay, what are the charts telling me? Because if the charts are going down, how can I navigate through that? I've said this very often. I shouldn't say often as frequently, but I've said this quite enough times. I'll say it again. Black swans are bullish events. They're not bearish events. Okay, anytime you have a black swan, you are either at the bottom or you're very, very close to the bottom. Okay, and that, a lot of people wanted to treat the recent month as more of a psychological black swan, which, first of all, I think is the dumbest thing I've ever heard as far as trading goes. And I've heard some pretty dumb things. This is crypto, right? So, um, that's not how that works. At least that's not how it should work. You know, like it doesn't work that way, because if something is psychologically one way or the other, but the price is not telling you that, then that doesn't add up. Okay, people were saying that this is a capitulation event, like a psychological capitulation. And again, I think that that's very silly, because a capitulation event is a price action event. Okay, you can make up a term for that, and you can try to force a way to make sense out of that, but that's not how that works. And that's exactly why people get stopped out of things like this. And we can look at Bitcoin on the weekly to look at this. Like for the past 3 weeks, we've been going up. Yes, this candle's only a day old, but People have been telling you like this big candle was a capitulation candle, which is laughable, because capitulation is like usually that's like a very strong move. Okay, so looking back at the previous cycle here on Bitcoin first, your capitulation event was here. Okay, it was here. And so we went from 46,000 to about 18,000. So we went more than 50%. Actually, I'll just get my date and time range here to kind of focus on this. So, and this isn't exact necessarily, but we went down 61% in 112 days. That's quite a lot of droppage in a short amount of time. Okay. And you might say, well, that's not a big enough drop, and it needs to be instant like this. And I'm like, I disagree, strongly disagree. For one, a lot of people are going to say that this is not a big deal. This was a very big deal. People were freaking out. Okay, people were absolutely freaking out, and I know this because I had people unfollowing me. I had people blocking me, saying that I'm interested to buy once it hit 20,000. Okay, and so people were beyond freaking out. We also got to keep in mind this is when all the FTX situation and everything like that came about. Okay, so I also know that a lot of people are making the same statements here, and so within two candles we went down 16% in 14 days. So it's like 8% per day, and so this is more percentage per week. But also you got to understand like 16% is not that much either. Okay, because we could also make mention, of something like this, where in one day this went down 14, almost 15%. Was this capitulation too? We know in hindsight that that was not, because we had a run up from there. We dropped a little bit lower down to 54,000, then we went all the way up to 104, almost 105. So, and even higher if you include the wicks. So you see what I'm saying? Like, this is not something that's dictated whenever you decide it to be dictated. Like, it's usually a one-time event. It's usually a marker of something more significant. And you got to understand that capitulation is not the end of the cycle either. Like, a lot of people want to, you know, try to make it like the end of it. Okay, like it's nearing the end of it, but you also got to understand from this we still dropped further. Okay, we were at least 100 days, 130 days there until the bottom, and then after that we had another 300 and almost 50 days. Is like 470 days total. Okay, so this is quite a long time. And the thing that you got to be very careful for is you can't say, well, like this is the bottom, so the capitulation was until here. Okay, that's not how that works. Capitulations are not the bottom, first of all. And second of all, it's easy for you to say, it's easy for someone to do this in 2025 when this is happening in real time. See what I'm saying? Like I was observing this in real time, just like I'm observing the current price action in real time. And I'm telling you that this is not a capitulation event. Now, I had mentioned a lot of this stuff about capitulations, and there's things like Michael Saylor bought again, and like the market is up about 2%. It's down. It was almost 3% here earlier, but you still have the same events that people think are bearish. Saylor bought some Bitcoin, tariffs, things like that, and the market is looking pretty good across the board. So I think, but what does that tell you? To me, that says that a lot of this news-based fear, this is literally FUD, and it's all like fear mongering. It's exactly what it is: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. A lot of people have been fearful to trade. I'm not saying that's wrong to be fearful to trade either. Like there's times, like you shouldn't live in fear, but there are times when you shouldn't trade because the risk is too high. There's a big difference between not trading because I'm afraid and not trading because the risk is not worth it. Very big difference. One is much more focused on emotion, and much more susceptible. Because here's the thing: if you lead by emotion, then you can be manipulated by emotion. Okay, and a lot of people, a lot of news places in particular, will try to manipulate your trades based off emotion. That's exactly how market psychology works. It's exactly how it works. Okay, and there are people that know, like there's big institutions, there's a lot of big, names and everything like that. They know that people will be shaken out over one candle. They know that people like I can't think of that guy's name. Like anything that he tries to get people to buy, people will buy it, and everything goes down like 90%. Okay, so and this is not a CT personality. This is just some legacy guy. My point is, you can be manipulated, and you need to put yourself in a position where you should not be. Okay, and in my opinion, the best way to do it is to focus on the facts, focus on the charts, focus on risk management, stay calculated. Um, Try not to waver. If you do waver, take a step back. Okay, and I've been here for a decade. Okay, I can waver from time to time, and but you just take a step back. You come up with a contingency, and then you get back to it. Okay, and in worst case scenario, you just don't trade. Okay, the whole narrative behind hodling is really a joke, but the origin of it was the guy didn't know if he should buy or sell. He made a drunk post, didn't know if he should buy or sell, so he's just going to hold. He's not going to do anything else. He's just going to keep it as it is. And I think we've lost that lesson over time, where it's like, okay, that guy felt like he will lose if he sells because it could go higher, but he's also going to lose if he buys because it's going to go lower. And so he's just going to hold what he's got. And that's actually a very great mentality. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that now. They want to freak out too much. They don't learn those lessons, right? So, anyway, I digress from that. But let's get into the nitty gritty here with Bitcoin. All right, so let's get started here on the weekly. So, as I mentioned before, we had three candles that were kind of bullish going into this zone. This is a daily zone, so I'm probably not going to cover it. I'm not going to cover it for this time frame. So, I'm going to kind of erase it and kind of move on with this. Now, there's a few different things going on here. So first of all, we're really within a range, a pretty big one. So here's your swing high order block range, and on the low side you have this. And so this will take different forms. You could put it down here. I'm going to put it right here. So this is pretty much your range, and this is one reason why we've had a lot of discussions about where we're going to go with this, right? So because a lot of people, including myself, have said 74,000, 72,000, roughly in that range. Most people are kind of bearish here, and so it takes different forms, right? And so the best way to look at this, in my opinion, is to take the two sides and put a kind of a fib block here. I just call it a fib block. It's really just an order block that has a midline through it, and so this kind of gives us the bigger context of what we're looking at. 104.5 to the high side, 73.9 or 74 to the low side. In the mid range, we have 89,262 or 89.3 basically. I always tend to round up to the nearest dollar or round, depending on what I'm doing, right? So 89.3. Now, that's basically where we're at now as far as the mid range goes. So, this is also why the range that I just deleted on the daily is so important, because that's a critical region on the daily. It's also a critical region on the weekly, and so this is where we might get some contention. So don't be shocked if we kind of reject here for the next day or two. And I'm not saying that we will or that we should, but I'm saying that is a critical level to look at. And so that may take a couple days to break. We could get a rejection here for today, or for the rest of the day, tomorrow, maybe even Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we break through that towards the second half of the week. Okay, so don't get too focused or consumed on the drop of that or the retest of that. That may take some time, but we may get through at the end of the week. Now, to keep in mind, this is also the first day. This is the first day of the weekly candle here, so there is a chance that we could still hold below this 89,300 for this week, but then break the next week. So it may take longer than you want, and that's where you see green today and you get bullish, and I am bullish here, but that doesn't mean that we're going to break through all this today. And even if we break through it today, we still have to wait for the weekly close, which is almost 7 days away. Just over 6 days, I should say. So you might have to be more patient than you want to be. And again, this is where the market psychology comes into play. You need to be patient. You need to be calculated, get your risk management. But more importantly, overall, like you can't do all of those um, unless you have the emotional intelligence. Don't be swayed by your emotions, okay? It's perfectly fine to get those. Going back to the emotional aspect, like people think that you shouldn't have these emotions. I strongly disagree with that. I think it's perfectly fine to be able to have those emotions, just like you would have, good emotions too, to be joyful, to be happy, to be compassionate, things like that. But the thing is, you don't want to react those way in that way because the markets tend to penalize people that behave that way. That's why I'm not necessarily saying you can't rely on emotions. I'm saying that is detrimental to trading typically. The best performing is typically the ones that are most robotic with this. That's also why algorithmic trading is so successful recently. Um, so that's something to come. Anyway, I digress from that. But the weekly here is what we're looking at for the 89.3. That's pretty much it for the weekly. There's nothing really else. We're kind of in no man's land to the downside. We should have really, I feel like we should have really closed this gap a little bit. Not because it's a gap, but because of a retest point. But that's totally fine. It doesn't have to do that. Now, as far as the A-Run goes, we're at a bullish consolidation here, pretty wide, 85 to 35, so about a 50% marker. That's pretty good. You want a wider consolidation for the for the bulls here. If you're a bull, you want the wider the better. 50% is pretty ideal. Anything 50% or higher is pretty good. So we got that. RSI is above 50 on the weekly. Talked about that a little bit as well. It was at historical lows a couple weeks ago on the daily, and so that is something to keep in mind. So we have that situation going on. It's going pretty well. As far as the Aaron band goes here, we were pushing up here against this little squeeze part, and so sometimes it comes back up, sometimes it rejects here. I've mentioned as a high time frame aspect that this will probably chop. So again, don't be impatient if we chop for the next week or two while we get this reclaim. Okay, that's kind of what I'm looking at. So I'm cautiously optimistic here, cautiously bullish here. I still think take it one at a time. The markets have not recovered fully because um, if they recovered fully, it's going to be above this band and it's going to be blue. Okay, so that's just kind of a hint there for that, at least on the weekly. And so the daily looks pretty good. We can look at the daily here. We got the blue and above the band. This is what you want to see on the weekly, but this is on the daily, however. So once this gets on the weekly, then I'm super bullish. But right now, I've got to be a little bit patient with this. You have the bullish cross here. You have the RSI reclaim above 50. This is where I looked at this at the 24 marker. You can check right around, late February to very early March, where I talked about this being very significant. You had that bullish divergence here. We're basically at the mid. And so this is where the daily comes into play with the weekly in mind. You have the weekly level at the line here at about 89, 3 or 400, whatever. The daily marker here, very similar. And then you also have this level, okay? You have a fib block on top of the fib block. And so here are your three levels here. You got 91 to the upside, 87.1 to the downside, 89 even roughly to the mid. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. That's why this range is so critical, because it's a daily and a weekly setup. Okay. So just be patient. Now the good news is that if you're patient long enough and this reclaims, then this should hold. This should hold pretty good. So that's the good thing. So if we get above this zone, you should be able to, with confidence, have a long something like this. And then you could even target the highs here for like 3.28 R at about 18, almost 19% or higher if we think you're going to go higher. So I think that's pretty good. That's the good thing about these critical levels is once they reclaim, once they make some moves, they should hold, but in theory. Okay, so we'll see. Now, what if it doesn't hold, right? If it doesn't hold, then you're going to have a breakdown right here. I don't like the breakdown. I don't like shorting this here. One, because shorts are just not going to give you the R&R here, but also two, you have my band structure here. So I would prefer to have something down here and then have your stop loss where the band is. And so that's only going to give you a 2R, even if you get down to 74,000. It's just not worth it to me. I think it's worth much more R&R to just not trade at all. And that's the thing, like, R&R doesn't have to be monetary. R&R could be I get time off to spend time with my family, or I get a day off from the charts, or I can learn a new skill, or I can put more hours into my job, right? So your R&R is going to be, or it could just be doing nothing all day, right? So like your R&R is whatever you decide it to be, and that's why I'm not a big fan of shorts here, because shorts have given us limited downside. Even if we're looking at a chart like this, where it's basically almost all downside, the limitations have been two or three candles, right? So after like three candles, it reverses. Two or three candles, it reverses. Or that's five, but you get what I'm saying. So you got to be careful. Like you really have to be invested into the charts, and that's where I could make money focusing on shorts, but then I'm going to be at the charts all day, and that's not what I want. For me, my 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 day to day activities are worth more than just staring at a chart all the time. That's why a lot of people like to do spot. That's why a lot of people like bullish price action, because they can just buy and they can forget about it for 3 years and then they're rich. See what I'm saying? So that's how that works. So that is Bitcoin in a nutshell. Let's go to Ethereum. All right, on to Ethereum here. It's up about 3.5% for today. All right, so starting on the weekly here, we probably won't spend too much time on ETH. Hasn't done necessarily a lot in retrospect, although it is is outperforming Bitcoin for the day. One thing that we want to see here is, so we're in this big order block zone here. Really, the start of this has been middle of February 2021, so pretty much 4 years ago. And it's pretty sad that we're pretty much at the same price point from for like almost 1,500 days. And so this is one reason why I think we just need to keep this one simple. It's over time just not very productive versus other coins. So and it also gives you a good state of the market as well. Like when something like Ethereum is not performing well, what is it? What does that say, right? So anyway, what you want to look at here, this is the weekly level that we've had for almost 4 years now. You had your price action underneath this zone to kind of help verify the top edge of this. Now we're back down, and now we're kind of within this range. Now the good news is on the weekly, we had a recovery here, so this is good enough, right? And so this is going to be your new range, where you're looking at this section here. So upside is going to be 2120, which is what we discussed in my premium group on Discord, and the low side of that is about 1940. If you're not in my Discord, if you're not in the premium group, go ahead and check my profile on X. There's a link in the bio. You can check that out. If you're on YouTube watching this, you can check the description on this. So, but with this here, what I want to look at for the weekly is a reclaim of this 2121. Okay, and that's something I've talked about for a couple weeks now. We really need to get that home. If we can do that, then it's good to go. I would actually consider buying a long-term spot position here, because if it can do that, then theoretically, if we go back to all-time high here, or not, that's not all-time high, sorry, I thought it was higher actually. So about 117, 120. If you want to go to price discovery, you're looking at like 130%, which honestly isn't that much, to be honest with you, compared to other assets, and compared to more performing assets like Solana, which we'll get into, which will probably do bigger numbers, and even coins like Bonk, where although I do criticize Bonk, I do think it can do higher than 130% versus Ethereum. So we'll see where that goes. The Ethereum is pretty much that dark horse of the market, where it really needs to perform well. And a lot of people have this discussion, right? Like, is the market even going to do well at all as long as Ethereum does not? And I think that's a very reasonable discussion. I don't know if I agree with it necessarily, but that makes sense to me. Why would the entire market go up when pretty much the top one of the top five performing assets, and by and large the main of the alts is very lackluster. And that's the thing. And the thing is, Ethereum has limited time to figure this out, because if the market does move without Ethereum, well, that means Solana is going to be above Ethereum. Okay, Solana would flip Ethereum. There's no guarantee that Ethereum is going to hold the second non-stable coin position. Okay, there are other assets that can do that. Okay, so you got Solana that's doing pretty good. I mean, it's roughly the same as far as its performance. Like it has cheaper fees. I mean, I don't want to get into it in this video. This is not a technical video, but Solana is real competition to Ethereum, and it's very close to it. I can see Solana flipping Ethereum very easily. XRP is one that where I disagree with the mindset culture of XRP. I don't like it. I personally don't think it's going to perform well, but also it has performed well recently, and it does have the ability to flip Ethereum as well. And I'm talking like if Ethereum does not perform well, it's going to go from rank 2 to at least rank 4. And then you got other coins. You got like Sonic, which used to be Phantom, doing pretty well. A lot of coins on that ecosystem are doing pretty well right now. If you're in my premium group, we are going to do a video on um, small caps and other coins in the Sonic ecosystem. Okay, there's not a lot of people looking at that, and I'm going to try to present that to my paid subscribers, and that's part of being a member. You always get the first fruits of pretty much all of the content that I produce. So, including things like that, which are time sensitive, and like Bongo is a coin that I talked about last year at roughly like 2 million, and it went up to like 70 million. So that's something that you'll miss out on potentially. I'm not saying that's not a guarantee, right? But you get what I'm saying. I focus on my subscribers first, of course. So but you got like Solana, you got XRP, you got Sonic. There's a couple other ones that could get up there, and I'm just saying like this could hurt Ethereum very quickly. And in my opinion, again, I did not want to get technical on this, but one of the worst things that could happen to the ecosystem is that there's coins like AVAX or projects like AVAX and Sonic. There's a lot of protocols and projects out there that are EVM compatible, Ethereum Virtual Machine. And so what that does is basically takes all the innovations from Ethereum, the solidity that's involved in that, and it basically allows you to write an Ethereum based package for a different chain. Now it's much more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. The idea is you take what's good about Ethereum. You already see where I'm going with this. You take what's good about Ethereum, and other chains can utilize it. Well, what's the point of Ethereum? Okay, and so Ethereum ends up being like that, that historic city that's probably in your area that's kind of cool, but not really. Like, see what I'm saying? Like, it's cool at first, but when you get used to it, it's just like, what's the point of this? This is just a tourist trap or whatever. So, and there's some good historic areas, but that's not the point of this video. The point is, when you take the good parts out of Ethereum and you put them into other chains, those make those chains valuable. There's a reason why Sonic is building an EVM based chain, okay? Because they realize that there's something useful out of that Ethereum had. Now they're taking it for themselves. So I do think that Ethereum's biggest strength is also its biggest weakness, that there's no point for Ethereum anymore. Okay, and especially since, and my, again, this is not a technical video, and so maybe I should reserve this, but I think one of the biggest mistakes Ethereum has ever done is moving away from proof of work. Okay, they moved from proof of work going to proof of stake. And when they did that, they lost their, first of all, they lost their opportunity to be stuck as a commodity. Okay, but second of all, like, it doesn't give you, like, it loses inherent value, in my opinion, because when you have proof of work, and go ahead and look at some of the proof of work coins out there, the top two are Bitcoin and Litecoin. Now, Litecoin's not doing very well either, but that makes itself as a commodity. And we can look at Litecoin here while I'm talking. And so you got Litecoin here, not as performative, but when you look at, let's see, I just kind of want to look at this for the past 1,500 days, 14, some, was it 1490? So it's down. Okay, so roughly, let's just take the top of this. This is now about 57%, right? So not that great. But my point is, with the proof of work, like, you have a work system put into place, okay? So you have inherent transactions and things like that. Now they moved away from the proof of work because of energy costs. But proof of stake isn't really helping out either, because your fee, I mean, your fees are lower, but they're still pretty high compared to Solana, where Solana did something different, right? And so I actually saw a post yesterday about somebody complaining that somebody else was using the Lightning Network to pay for some coffee, and it was the fees were 3 cents. So it was like 3 cents off of like a $10 transaction or whatever. I can't remember how much it was, but they were saying that that 3 cent fee is too high. It ended up being about half of 1%, which I'd say would be high relatively speaking. But that we would be praising something like that 5 years ago. Okay. Now Ethereum for a simple, if you want to do that same $10 transaction on Ethereum, that's going to be like $3. Okay. And if you're lucky, it's going to be like 50 cents. Now that's still relatively low to where we had it, but the thing is, we're not in 2017 anymore. We're in 2025, where we have solved the fee issue. We've already done that. And so Solana, I think my highest fee ever that I remember on Solana is 1.5 cents. Okay, that's the highest. And some of them are so low, I don't even check them because it doesn't even, like, it's less than like 1/100th of 1 cent, 1 penny. It's so low. See what I'm saying? Like, so that doesn't really, that's not a factor anymore. See what I'm saying? So did Ethereum solve the fee issue? Yeah, kind of, but at what cost? Because they really didn't. I mean, their fees are still 50 times higher than Solana is at a minimum, if not a couple thousand higher. Okay, they're still higher than Lightning Network, which is now getting criticized for being high relative to Solana, and so it doesn't work out very well. Okay, so my point is that any strength that Ethereum has, other chains already do. Smart contracts, lower fees, building on top of it, EVM compatibility, solidity, the flexibility with solidity, and so what good is it? Okay, and so I'm not trying to criticize it, but I do think it is worth mentioning. Now, as far as the charts go, we just need to go above that 2120. That's what I was saying. So anyway, kind of did a technical ramble at that point. Let's go ahead and go to Solana to round out the video. All right, here is Solana, and we're gonna start on the weekly here. Going to kind of be a little more simplistic as well with this one. Try not to go into technicals, but this is kind of a hybrid between Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay, similar to Bitcoin because we've had a run up from the lows, um, and we're going into the range like Bitcoin. It's very similar to Solana as we also need to kind of reclaim this level here. It's already at the lows from a previous position, something that we had since January 2022. So the thing is, it held the zone here. This is very close. Long story short, this is a held position, and it's already pushing above the 138. My goal was if it pushes above 138 on the weekly, we're good to go. Okay, that's how I see it, and so it's better looking like this. So we can hold above that zone. That's key. Okay, and so I'm not touching Solana here. My goal really is just to get this. If we close above the zone, we can have a stop loss underneath here, and then we can spot hold this to all time highs at about 630, right? 6.3 R. So we'll see how that goes. It's doing pretty well today. I do want to make mention like Solana adjacent. So like coins like if you coins like Bonk and things like that, like Solana based tokens are starting to warm up. Okay. Now Bitcoin or Bonk I should say is not doing as good as other coins, but it was doing pretty good um, in the past week, and Sonic's up 12% today. A lot of these, and so some of these are Solana based tokens that are doing pretty well, and so that's something to keep in mind. I am not in the bandwagon that meme coins are dead. I thought that meme coins were going to be kind of forgotten about. It seems like that's the case. We'll see where that goes. But as people say things like that, your R&R for those actually tend to go up. Because like something like Bonk was a coin that we talked about in premium in my Apex group, and it's doing pretty good. We basically not only did we hit the lows, we also hit the wick of the lows too. It was a really good trade, very solid trade. We're up about 15 R, probably more so with the pump just now. But that's something to consider. If Solana is performing well versus Ethereum, then the Solana ecosystem is probably doing pretty well. So that's pretty much it with Solana. I do kind of want to go to Solana ETH just very quickly to see how this is going. And you've pretty much been in a channel for really since 2024. So you have something like this, and so we can not the best looking channel, but just bear. I guess this. Yeah, I mean, I guess this makes more sense anyway. So this is your bullish channel here that you got to work with, and so we're getting close to the lows here. Now, will this recover? Will this not? I don't tend to look at pairs like this as much as I used to, but it's very clear that we've been in a bullish uptrend since at least December of 2023. And you could even argue, I mean, you could even argue further, right, that we hit this low as well, back in September of 2023. And so that's a pretty big channel that we have to work with there. So just saying, I again that points in the direction that not just Solana is probably worth more than Ethereum, and it could flip it, but that Solana as an ecosystem is doing much better, and that you should pay attention to Solana tokens as well. Because take a look at, I mean, what do you have for Ethereum? Like you got Aave. I mean, you have some good. You have some pretty good ones, right? Like I don't subscribe to the whole SPX 6900 thing, but you probably have 10 good Ethereum tokens, okay, that have made it through all these years, okay. I mean, I remember when Ethereum was just Ethereum. And then I remember when tokens got on Ethereum, and I would trade coins like POA, like POA, and I would do pretty good. Okay, but now you maybe have 10 good solid coins on Ethereum that are going to survive this cycle, and there's a lot more coins with Solana, and that makes sense because Solana is, whether you like it or not, Solana is the choice network for this cycle. Okay, and that's going to be why there's more tokens out there that are Solana focused, is because they've just all been doing well. Now that's going to be reduced the next cycle, okay, but you're still going to have more Solana coins surviving, and so we'll see how that goes. I don't know what the next ecosystem is going to be. Sonic is probably the best one to try to take that market share. Because last cycle we had Atom and Dot and Solana. I thought Solana was probably a little too immature. And then you had the FTX situation, as far as collateral damage. You also had AVAX, okay, and so those were the big three. I'd say AVAX, Atom, and Polkadot. And so now you have Solana. Yeah, and honestly, I would say Ethereum was the coin of last cycle. Or no, I'm sorry. It's probably Binance. I forgot about Binance, and it was pretty short lived. Ethereum was the one before that. It really depends on how you view the cycles. A lot of people view. See, I believe that we're in our fourth cycle since 2017, and some people think it's three, and so I don't have time to get into that. But anyway, now you have, for next cycle, you probably have Solana, you have Sonic, and I mean you still have Atom and Dot and Avax, but those are not going to perform well. Let's just be real. So, and it just depends. Maybe we're not even going to get another one. So anyway, my point is, don't neglect Solana as far as its meme coins, as far as its market share, things like that. So anyway, that is the video. Let me know what you think. Um, I hope you are able to navigate the charts well. I do think that the recovery here is pretty decent. I think that the worst is pretty much over, but we still need to get above this range here on Bitcoin. Ethereum has just key levels, and that's the thing. Ethereum and Solana both just have key levels that we need to look at. Bitcoin's probably the most tricky of them all. And so a lot of these coins are doing pretty well, but that doesn't mean that they're going to keep performing well. So we'll see how that goes. A lot of these are AI coins as well. And like you got something like Bully that's up 23%, which looks nice, but look at the weekly. It looks like crap, right? So don't be fooled by this necessarily, okay? And so I really want that to be looked at as something to take precaution. A lot of people want to, especially for people like me that are more front facing, like, well, Otsu, like, why aren't you making more positions? Like, everything looks great. And I'm like, well, it looks great on paper for just today only, but in the grand context, they like that bully position. Why would you trade this? See what I'm saying? So anyway, that is the video. Let me know what you think. I'm happy to continue to discuss things more. I'm going to try to pump out some more videos over the course of the week as things settle here at home. Again, let me know what you think. Please sign up for Apex Premium. I got a lot of things going on with that. I'll see you next time.